All right, so check this out. In a minute here, my friend, actually right now, is going to come up. Her name is Lindsay. You probably know her. Everybody make some noise for Lindsay. Come on, let's go. So Lindsay has been a volunteer here for a little bit. She's going to introduce herself to you. But what I need you to do is to give her your undivided attention and show her the utmost respect as she kind of leads us in the close of our series. So you ready?
Yeah.
All right, give it up, Lindsay.
Hang on a second. My mic, can you guys hear me? Oh my gosh, this is what I sound like on a mic. Okay. Okay, welcome to 621. I'm so glad that you guys are all here today. Happy Valentine's Day. I don't like Valentine's Day. I know I should, but I don't know. I know. But I hope you guys have had a great Valentine's Day. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Lindsay, like Steve just said, and let me tell you a little bit about myself first before I get started. I've been serving here at the Mix in 621 for the past 3 years. I'm actually a teacher. Oh, well. I'm a teacher at Salem High School, and I teach photography. Some of you have been in my class, which is awesome. So it's my job to kind of figure out all of you, and it's challenging, rewarding, and awesome, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So we're in a series right now called The Pursuit, and I actually get to wrap the series up. It's kind of a short series. Last week, Steve talked about the large foxes in relationships and how we have a choice in how we date. And oftentimes we choose the wrong order. Last week he talked about how we should find ourselves in God first, and then search for our relationship and significant other after that. The choice that we decide on which order that we're pursuing things really is going to impact our relationships a lot. So that's what we talked about last week. But this week we're going to talk about conflict in relationships. Conflict is something that we all have to deal with in relationships, and how you handle this now as a teenager with the many humans that are in your life is going to impact your future relationships. The really important ones, like the one you'll have with your boss, the one with your family, your friends, or even your spouse, which I'll talk about a lot today. I'm in no way an expert on this topic. I've actually had a lot of growing I've had to do in this department even last week, despite my being oldish and the fact I'm wearing hipster bifocals, but so I'm still growing and learning in this too. You'll always be growing and learning about how to deal with conflict, because God surprises you with new challenges. But conflict is unfortunately something that we all have to deal with. It's part of being a human. I don't know if most of you know this, but I actually did not grow up in Michigan. I grew up in southern Ohio, in a town called Dayton, Ohio, which is like 40 minutes outside of Cincinnati. It wasn't in my plans to move to Detroit, but I met a very cute boy in college. Some of you may know him or have seen him around. He's that tall drink of water named Sean. We dated for 5 years in college and ended up getting married shortly after we graduated. Here are some pictures from our wedding, as you can see on this side. Oh, it's so sweet, right? Matthew 19:6 says, "Since they're no longer two but one, let no one split apart what God has joined together." So those pictures make it look like everything is always magical and happy in our relationship. But we all know that there's evil forces that are trying to break apart the good and godly things in our lives. Even things as simple, small, and pure evil as fried eggs. When Sean and I first got married, we were cooking Saturday breakfast, and I remember those first days when we moved up in Detroit. We moved away from our family. It was just us. It was one of our first breakfasts we had ever made together. We decided to make fried eggs. I got, my pan out, the spatula, sprayed it, cracked my eggs on it, started cooking the eggs, and I grabbed the spatula. The eggs were ready, and I grabbed the spatula to flip them, and Sean says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to flip the eggs." He said, "Why would you do that? That's totally the wrong way to cook eggs. You don't flip them, you just cook one side. You're going to ruin them." I was like, what? Now, those of you that know me well know that I'm kind of a proud woman at times, and this pride does tend to take over and get the best of me. I was ready to post up. No man tells me that I cook eggs wrong. That's unacceptable. Yeah, who wants to eat sunny side up eggs anyway? That's disgusting. I let my pride get the best of me and I started yelling. That is so disgusting. The right way to cook eggs is to flip them so you don't get salmon vanilla or whatever that is. He got defensive back, posted up for sunny side up, which I don't even know how you can do that. You mean salmonella, he said. Tensions were high. Neither of us wanted to back down. We kept arguing and screaming over eggs. It took a few minutes for us to realize what we were fighting over. It kind of happened at the same time in our minds. We were in the middle of a ride or die verbal scream match, looked at each other, smiled, and started laughing. We could not believe that we got so heated about eggs. Luckily, we realized how ridiculous we were behaving about something so silly before we really said something that was hurtful. Our relationship was still okay in that instant, although the eggs weren't so lucky. But the same cannot be said on other days in our relationship. We've all been there, wanting to erupt on someone because of those little annoyances. Small things can creep up in any relationship and ruin it. Small things like how someone likes their eggs cooked, or someone tapping their pencil in class and it's just driving you crazy. Or for my mom, it was me eating my cereal in the morning and clanking the bowl, and she would eventually yell down the stairs, "Lindsay, stop clanking the bowl." Yeah. Maybe you kept fighting about ridiculous stuff that shouldn't cause fights, yet they were causing fights anyways. Or maybe it was just the annoying habits that you start to notice in the other person. The things that you start out thinking are cute and quirky about someone that makes you want to be their friend end up causing you to grit your teeth eventually. So what we're going to talk about today is the little foxes and what that entails. So if you look on the screen, Song of Solomon 2:15 says, "Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom." Now, to you and I, when we think of little foxes, we picture this. Oh, it's so cute. Everyone count it through with me and say, "Aw." 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah. They look so cute and cuddly, and they would fit in my purse or my backpack, so I could take that cuteness everywhere. But the small foxes are actually more dangerous when you're a farmer trying to protect your vineyard. See, the large foxes, they can actually reach the grapes off of the vine. So they just, the large foxes will march right up, eat the grapes, and then go on their merry way. The small foxes actually can't reach the grapes. So what they have to do is burrow underneath the roots, and they eventually knock the plant over so they can eat the grapes. Problem is, it ends up killing the plant. So we're all on guard for watching out for the large foxes in relationships. They're usually much easier to spot. In a relationship, the large foxes or red flags might be they work for the mafia, or they have a severe personality disorder and their name is Kevin. I mean Hedwig. I mean Orwell. I mean Beast. The little foxes are much harder to recognize that way. The little foxes are like those little things that drive you crazy when dealing with people. Things like someone kicking your chair in class, or someone using their cell phone when you're hanging out with them and you just want them to give their attention to you, or someone listening to their really bad music loudly next to you. These things may seem harmless and easy to ignore in the beginning, but eventually these small foxes can bring down your entire relationship and destroy it if you don't handle things properly. This verse is saying let's be on guard for the big problems, but let's really be on guard for the small issues so they don't bring down our relationships. Very few get into relationships or friendships with other humans expecting or anticipating trouble. This verse is warning us. It's not saying if troubles happen, it's saying when, because they will come. We have to be ready to handle the small foxes in relationships properly so we can keep our relationships strong. So there are several different small foxes that we must prepare to handle, and fighting is one of them. Raise your hand if you've ever been in a fight with someone before. Yeah, most of us have, right? We've all been in fights with people in our lives because we can be frustrating, and we tend to hurt each other a lot. Maybe you got into a fight with your mom about your grades because you can't take the pressure that your parents put on you to do well in school. Or maybe you got in a fight with one of your siblings because they are just driving you crazy. They take pleasure in pushing your buttons. So you get mad, you call them names, you push them down, so they finally storm out of your room and leave you in peace and quiet. Or maybe it's a boyfriend or girlfriend. You keep having the same fight over and over again because they keep pressuring you to do things that you don't want to do, and you want them to respect your beliefs. Or maybe it's a friend of yours. You found out that this friend is spreading rumors about you in your group, and it's causing a lot of conflict and division. The Bible tells us that we're all broken by sin and that we don't know how to handle some of the pain inflicted on us by others. Or we're angry, so we pick fights with people because we don't know how to deal with our anger in a healthy way that honors God. If any of these situations sound a bit familiar, then you're in the right place. Let's see what God says about dealing with conflict and anger in our relationships. How you respond to conflict now and anger will impact all of your relationships in the future, especially the one that you have with your spouse. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to stop taking things so personally. Raise your hands if you live with someone who is kind of a neat freak and they want everything clean and spotless in the spaces that you're working or living. Anybody? That would be my forever bae. Sean loves everything neat and tidy. Or raise your hand if you can think of someone in your life that just really annoys you. It's just something about them, how they're blunt or loud or rude, or how they're just hyper and they have too much energy and they just drive you up a wall. These little tics about people's personalities are little foxes that will really affect how we feel and interact with people. Proverbs 21:19 says, "It's better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman." Yeah, I struggle with that one a little bit. The Bible is telling us that living in a desert is better than living with someone who nags and frets about every little thing. We need to learn to let the little things go. If we're the neat freaks, that means that we need to accept people in their mess. A little mess is okay. God loves us in our mess, so we need to learn to love others in theirs. If we're the messy ones, which is me, my classroom is the only place Sean can't touch, and it tends to be really messy. But if we're the messy ones, maybe we can learn to be a bit neater, to be more considerate of others. Sometimes we all need to compromise. It's not worth worrying or nagging about these little things if it's draining the love out of our relationships. As for personality differences that are in people around you, we must learn to love the people for who they are. God made that person for a purpose and loves them the way they are. We have to try and honor God and do the same thing, which I know is hard because people can be annoying. Trust me, even though it feels like sometimes these certain annoying people do it intentionally, they intentionally get hyper or drive you crazy to deliberately bother you, but that's really not the case. Sometimes people can't help it. Sometimes it's an accident. You never know what people are going through either. Maybe, the kid that's tapping his pencil in class has anxiety issues and they don't know how to deal with their energy. Or maybe your mom lashed out at you this morning because she's stressed about paying the bills and she has other stuff going on. People really aren't out to get you or bug you, so learn some patience and let things go that don't matter. Your relationships will thank you. This is something that you can practice right now with your families, with your siblings, and at your school. This is something that I need to practice. The second thing that we can do is we can seek first to understand the other person instead of spouting off your side of the story. Now, this is super hard. It's always what we want to do when we're hurt or offended. We immediately want to jump to the offense and attack mode. We want to post up instead of listening up. Proverbs 18:2 says that fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. Some people really care about being right in an argument instead of tending to the relationship. This will and need to be right is a little fox that will destroy your relationships. What happens when two people are in a fight and they only care about winning? Both end up losing in the end. This is something that tends to be really hard for me because I'm someone who can really overthink situations when people upset me in my life. I can also let pride get in the way. But God is telling us here that people who only care about being right are fools. Hang on, I need to get a drink. My throat's hurting. I'm good, thanks. We need to learn to stop and really listen, hear, and understand the other person's situation. Whenever you're facing conflict with someone in your life, you have to ask yourself this question: Do I want to be right, or do I want to make things right in the relationship? Which brings me back to my fried egg story. In that moment, I did not choose to understand what Sean's experiences were when cooking and eating eggs in his life. I wish I would have responded with something like, oh, did you grow up eating sunny side up eggs and enjoy eating this breakfast with your family? I see, I didn't really realize that that was your experience. Now I understand. Understanding isn't saying someone is right. Understanding is letting them know that you hear what they're saying. You're acknowledging their thoughts and opinions. Your spouse or friend or family member doesn't always want to hear how right you are. They want to know that they are heard and respected and that you value their feelings. This is something you can start doing in any relationship today. We need to sit down and be humble in our arguments. Seek to understand and show empathy and love to that person instead of seeking to be right. Another thing that we can do to deal with conflict better is we need to learn how to manage our anger. Anger is another little fox that can destroy our relationships. Proverbs 15:18 says, a hot-tempered person starts fights, a cool-tempered person stops them. Let's watch this video.
So, as it turns out, the green trash can is not recycling. It's for greens, like compost and eggshells. And the blue one is recycling. And the black one.
Riley is acting so weird. Why is she acting so weird?
What do you expect? All the islands are down.
Joy would know what to do.
That's it. Until she gets back, we just do what Joy would do.
Great idea. Anger, fear, disgust. How are we supposed to be happy?
Hey, Riley, I've got good news. I found a junior hockey league right here in San Francisco, and get this, tryouts are tomorrow after school. What luck, right?
Hockey?
Uh-oh, what do we do?
Guys, here, you pretend to be Joy.
Won't it be great to be back out on the ice?
Oh yeah, that sounds fantastic.
What was that? That wasn't anything like Joy.
Because I'm not Joy?
Yeah, no kidding.
Did you guys pick up on that?
Sure did.
Something's wrong.
Should we ask her?
Let's probe, but keep it subtle so she doesn't notice.
So, how was the first day of school?
She's probing us.
I'm done. You pretend to be Joy.
What? Okay,
It was fine, I guess. I don't know. Oh, very smooth. That was just like Joy.
Something is definitely going on.
She's never acted like this before. What should we do? We're gonna find out what's happening, but we'll need support. Signal the husband. Ahem.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
What? Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What? What is it, woman? What?
He's making that stupid face again.
I could strangle him right now.
Signal him again.
Ah, so, Riley, how was school?
You gotta be kidding me.
For this, we gave up that Brazilian helicopter pilot?
move. I'll be Joy.
School was great, all right?
Riley, is everything okay?
Sir, she just rolled her eyes at us.
What is her deal? All right, make a show of force. I don't want to have to put the foot down.
No, not the foot.
Riley, I do not like this new attitude.
Oh, I'll show you attitude. No. Stay happy.
What is your problem? Just leave me alone.
Sir, reporting high levels of sass.
Take it to DEFCON 2.
You heard that, gentlemen? DEFCON 2.
Listen, young lady, I don't know where this disrespectful attitude came from.
You want a piece of this, Pops? Come and get it.
Yeah, well...
Here it comes. Prepare the foot.
Keys to sector position. Ready to launch on your command, sir.
Just shut up!
Fire!
That's it. Go to your room. Now.
The foot is down. The foot is down.
Good job, gentlemen. That could have been a disaster.
Well, that was a disaster.
So how many of you have been in arguments like this with loved ones before? Yeah. We laugh at this video, but it's too real for a lot of us. What we choose to do with our anger impacts our actions and relationships so much if not managed well. There are two types of angry people. I don't know if you know that. there are the spewers and the stewers. The spewers tend to handle anger like a volcano that erupts in rage, like anger from the clip we just watched. You know you're a spewer if you explode in your rage and say things you don't really mean because you're giving into the temptation of your anger. Spewers in mid-eruption cause a lot of immediate damage when in an argument with someone. Now, stewers, those people tend to be the opposite. They hold their anger in and internalize it. They overthink their anger about someone quietly and to themselves, and they don't like to share when they're angry. This can be worse than the spewer, actually, because if the stewer doesn't handle their anger and communicate with the people that they're angry with, it grows into bitterness, resentment, and grudges. The reason this is so dangerous is because it slowly and steadily causes long-term damage to the relationship. Raise your hand if you're a spewer. Raise your hand if you think you're a spewer. Raise your hand if you are a stewer. I'm a stewer for sure. We have one of each in my house. I tend to be a stewer, holding everything in, and Sean tends to be a spewer. This can be very challenging in our relationship. Sean has learned to notice when I get quiet because he knows that this is deadly. He'll ask me questions like, "Are you angry with me?" And sometimes I'll still want to hold it in. Then he'll say, "Let's talk about this so we can get it out." I used to be afraid of telling people I was mad at them because I thought it would be too awkward, or sometimes I wouldn't want to talk about it, or sometimes I was afraid of hurting someone's feelings. But what I've learned over the years is that if the stewers don't open up and be honest about what's going on in our heads, you'll lose friends, hold grudges, and go crazy bottling things up. The enemy feeds off these things in your anger if we don't handle it well. Proverbs 10:12 says, "Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses." For the spewers as well as the stewers, we always must be open and honest with the people that we love when they hurt us. Gentleness and love need to be the armor that we wear into conflict battles. For the spewers, maybe this means we have to take a time out, get away for a second so we can cool off, so we don't say something that we don't mean to a loved one. For the stewers, this means pushing ourselves to acting on our anger that's in our hearts and actually opening up with the people that we feel like we've been wronged by. We need to get over the discomfort we feel of letting someone know they hurt us. It's okay to be uncomfortable sometimes. That's usually a sign that you're pushing yourself to grow. Being a steward, I actually recently had to live this out. I got in a fight with one of my mentors, a friend of mine, someone who I really look up to. I felt really betrayed by this person who I thought I could trust. After the argument happened, I stormed off in my anger and sat and thought about it for a week. Part of the reason I waited to confront her was because I was still really angry and I didn't want to say something that I would regret. But finally I decided that enough was enough and I needed to explain myself. So I picked up the phone and called her. I explained why I was mad in a calm and mature way, expressing how much I admired and looked up to her. In that moment, and the moments up to this as a steward, I felt really uncomfortable on the phone with her, explaining why I was mad. But by the end of the conversation, we both understood each other and apologized. We're still friends today, and I'm glad we worked it out. You have to get over being uncomfortable, and suffering in silence does tend to let that person off the hook and makes you not want to be in the relationship with that person anymore. You can do it. Just make sure when you talk to the person to confront them, you're still honoring God and being gentle. I know what some of you are thinking. It's impossible to not get angry. What is this lady telling me to do? Not get mad? There is so much junk in the world. Am I supposed to avoid this emotion completely? I'm dealing with so much. It's okay to be angry. God created this emotional response in us to express the heartache from our world. And I know that you're all going through a lot and see a lot. I hear about the pain and suffering that you're dealing with at school, at home, in the hallways, and at church. Seeing the suffering that some of you go through at such a young age is one of the things that can make teaching kind of hard. But it's okay to be angry. That's a normal response. Ephesians 4:26 says, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." God is telling us to be angry, that it's okay. Anger isn't bad. In fact, it can be good. Anger happens when you fight for something that you love. Sometimes the love that you're fighting for is good. Being angry at injustice in the world is a good thing. Being angry because someone hurt you is a good thing too. It's okay to not be okay with being hurt. But we do not want to let anger overtake us, hijack us, and turn us into evil monsters, right? It'll ruin our relationships like the little foxes in the vineyards. When facing conflict in a relationship, you have to ask yourself this question: what am I fighting for in my anger? Is it the ability to be right? Is it for self-esteem or insecurity purposes? Am I fighting for me? We often fight for what we love. Before you bring up conflict, you have to know what you're fighting for. Are you fighting for yourself or for others? Are you fighting for the relationship or revenge? It's at that point when you know where your priorities are. God values people, so we need to as well, even in our anger. Let me take a drink, my throat hurts. So to bring up conflict in a godly way, it might look like this. You might say this to someone: hey, you know that I really care about you, and you're so amazing, but lately something has been bothering me. I'm hoping that you aren't doing this on purpose, because I know that you care about me and wouldn't intentionally hurt me, but lately, blank has really been hurting me and making me feel this way. Can you tell me why this is happening or how I can help change this? It's important in this situation to keep calm, even if the other person's caught off guard. You may have to react to a spewer with firm kindness that lets them know that you won't lose your cool, but you still care for them. You may have to react to a stewer with compassionate patience and say, I'm going to give you some space so you can process all of this. I care for you, but you're not off the hook. We're going to talk about this. Now, it's easy to kind of point the fingers at people when they're doing stuff wrong, but you also have to be able to accept criticism, which I think this is hard sometimes. This also means that you have to be willing to accept criticisms about issues that someone might have with you. You might also be caught off guard or feel like you want to defend yourself in your anger, but you need to remember what you're fighting for. You might respond to healthy criticism in this way: I'm sorry I've been making you feel that way. I can see where I've been causing you some frustration. I can see where I'm in the wrong. I don't want to keep hurting you, and that was never my intent. Are there ways that I can do better in the future so you don't feel this way? Now, you guys are probably like, I gotta say I was wrong. Yeah, you do, okay? The second part of the verse says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. God is telling us to not let any of our hurts stay hidden in isolation. It's much easier to stay bitter or to run away from dealing with your conflict than facing it head on. Don't let the sun go down. If you're in a relationship and someone brings up issues, you need to get angry. But don't get angry at the person. Get angry at the conflict and the damage that's being done to the relationship. Be angry that the devil has created all of these small foxes that come to attack our relationships. Foxes like taking things personally, lack of understanding and communication, dealing with your anger or ignoring it. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Love is complicated and messy. The enemies are the small things that are harder to notice. What if we didn't let a single small fox go untouched when conflict comes? What if we were willing to listen and understand? What if we were ready to encourage and reassure the person that we care for them and that we're on their side? It's okay to feel bad if you've hurt someone. That's the evidence that you care. But don't let those feelings become your identity in the relationship. Let it be your anger that drives you to fight for each other and push yourself through the conflict. Don't let anger turn into sin, and don't let the sun go down on your anger. Here are some action steps to help you face conflict in your life right now. The first thing that you can do is practice healthy ways to process your anger so you don't sin. And that might look different for different people because we all get angry and respond to anger in different ways. That might look like counting to 10 before you respond in your head quietly, going for a walk outside and getting some fresh air without your phone. Take a screen break, okay? It might be going for a run or doing some yoga, or maybe you're going, listening to some music by yourself, kind of do some meditation, just so you can cool off. If you're a spewer, you need to take a time out before you communicate with the person that you're in conflict with. That way you don't say things in the heat of the moment that you regret. Now, if you're a stewer, this means you need to get up, get open about what is hurting you, and talk about what's going on and what you're angry about. Be open and be honest, even if you feel uncomfortable. The second thing that you can do is to choose to be gentle and loving in how you respond when you're communicating. This can be kind of hard. Try to stay calm, to be honest, and to sit down and be humble. Admit your faults and choose to talk through a solution so you can move forward. We want to safeguard and protect our relationships. This starts with kindness and compromise, not with hate and angry words. The last thing that you can do, and this is actually the most important, is to invite God into conflicts with you. Pray for those who you're in conflict with. Pray for the relationship, that you both can find a solution through communication and honesty. When you're leading your relationships with God at the center, it's much easier to tackle conflict head on, because God's always got you. All right, to wrap up here, relationships are complicated and messy. How you handle conflict now will affect all of your relationships in the future, especially the one with your spouse. If you plan on dating or you're already dating, you're going to run into conflict. Marriage and relationships are all about how we can lead each other toward pursuing God. So if the person you're dating refuses to work on handling conflict, you may need to get rid of that person. You don't have to date to practice healthy conflict either. You can start now with how you talk to your friends, your parents, and other people in your life. Just remember this: conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional. You all have so much conflict ahead of you. I know you're like, great Valentine's Day message. You all have so much conflict ahead of you, but it's really true. You get to decide whether or not you are combative when you're facing disagreements, or if you're choosing love and grace. Facing conflict needs to be done with a loving heart. God gives us grace and forgives us and is gentle with us, so we need to strive to do the same, even in the midst of conflict. I always like to end with a quote from someone I admire. Martin Luther King Jr. said this: "Man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love." Will you stand and pray with me? Dear God, thank you for this time that we could talk about relationships and talk about how they're messy and complicated. Thank you that you've given us the words and the wisdom that we need when we deal with anger and pain and conflict in our lives. I pray that you'll make us brave in our relationships, and I pray that you will help us to care about making things right and not being right. Thank you for saving us, and thank you for the grace that you give us. Please help us to give that to others. We love you so much. Amen.